On the 11th of November 2017, a group of us from New Zealand who were in Jerusalem decided that we would attend the British Commonwealth War Graves commemoration of Armistice Day in Jerusalem. It was held on Mount Scopus, which lies close to the Mount of Olives. It proved to be quite a challenge getting there. For a start, it was a Sabbath, and in Israel all public transport stopped, so we had to cram everybody we could into one car. The other problem we had was that we were given the wrong time, so we arrived actually half an hour after everything started. It was a bit of a mad dash to get in place before the ceremony had gone too far. The war graves themselves, I think there's about 2,500 graves in the place, and there's also a memorial to 3,300 servicemen who have no graves and who are commemorated in the cemetery. There are a few very interesting features. There's about 34 New Zealanders buried here. It was mostly a place for British soldiers who were killed in the attack on Jerusalem in December of 1917. The War Memorial was commissioned, I think, about 1927, and Lord Allenby, who was the commander at the time of the Great War, opened it. Right in the middle of this commemoration place, there's a lovely chapel which was built and commemorated in 1927. And interestingly enough, it was the New Zealand government that contributed the interior mosaics, which are quite beautiful, and I'll show you a little later on in this clip.
Canada.
When it came time to lay wreaths, we all stood patiently waiting for the New Zealand wreath to be laid, watching all the other embassies and representatives laying their wreath, including countries like Canada, who to the best of my knowledge had no part whatsoever to play in the First World War in the Middle East. But then there were all sorts of other countries that also had even less reason to be there. Poland was one, I think, Finland, Greece. Nice to have representation, but we were waiting for New Zealand, of course. And we finally got to the time when we were ready to support our New Zealand representative laying the wreath, and we went Malta, and then we went Norway, and then we went Poland. And we thought, no, New Zealand comes somewhere between Malta and Norway. What's happened to New Zealand? It was interesting to see a representative from Turkey laying a wreath.
Turkey.
There are a number of both Turkish and German graves also in the war cemetery on Mount Scopus. As you can imagine, we were quite miffed, a little upset really, that our New Zealand representative hadn't been acknowledged in the ceremony, particularly since we travelled halfway around the world to share it. So not to be forgotten, we approached the commanding officer who was organising the event and requested that we have a wreath and we would lay it on behalf of New Zealand ourselves. So led by Councillor, then Deputy Mayor Calvin Clout, New Zealanders picked up the wreath and we laid it after everybody else had finished. I mentioned a little earlier that the chapel which sits in the cemetery was dedicated in 1927, and the New Zealand government paid for the murals which grace the interior. It is a very beautiful little chapel, and the mosaics are on each of the 4 walls. again, we were not slow to make our New Zealand presence felt. We felt that since we had in part funded this chapel, we certainly had the right to put our own flag in the middle of it. On the wall opposite the altar, there are more beautiful mosaics, and there is this description and acknowledgement of the servicemen, the members of the New Zealand Expeditionary Force who took part in the operations 1916 Sinai, Palestine 1918, and it reminds everybody that we came from the uttermost part of the earth. The final part of the ceremony was the exit of the Lone Piper.